Well, hey guys, Shanna Cramer here with Creatively Uncorked, bringing you this week's members-only painting. This is called Blue Pumpkin. If you're a member on the Creative Just Live website for Creatively Uncorked, this might be included in your membership if you have the acrylic membership. And we are going to take this simple painting and turn it into these lovely pumpkins that you see up here in the upper right corner. Now, this painting is going to get pretty darn dark. I've already got paint on myself. The colors that you're putting out on your plate today are going to be basics. We have phthalo blue, burnt umber, and white. You'll notice that I also have a Sharpie in my hand, and that Sharpie is just to help draw some of the areas a little bit darker. We're doing this because it's really hard to paint over Sharpie. But I should have checked to see if I had a working Sharpie first. Well, it's working well enough. I don't want to lose where I have my stems at and the edges of my pumpkin. And as you can see, looking at the original, woohoo, there it is. So as looking at the original, that the segment divisions are very dark. So I'm not worried at all about covering these with Sharpie because I know that I'm going to be painting dark colors over them later. So even if the Sharpie does show through, no big deal. All right, so I kind of want to get this edge of this leaf here a little bit. I don't want to lose my leaf. I don't want to draw the whole thing either. How about just the tip? Great way to do it. Okay, that way I can't lose my leaves, but I don't have to draw them all out. This one that's overlapping the pumpkin is probably the most important because it's overlapping the pumpkin and we're painting the pumpkin first. Okay, there we go. All right, that is enough of the sketching. The pencil lines are perfect for the rest of it. So I'm going to work with 3 main brushes today. I have the large flat, the medium filbert, and the small round. Okay, the purpose of these brushes, the big fat brush is for painting our background. The filbert brush is for painting our organic shapes, which is our entire pumpkin. And then we have this teeny tiny small round, just for those cute little curly cues out that up in the original. So we'll start out by taking our big flat brush. Dunk that in your water. All right, so with these colors, the way to use these colors the best is to think of them as the blue is your cool color, the brown is your warm color, and then white. Okay, so if you mix your warm and cool, or in this case, your blue and your brown, if you mix them together, you're going to get a very dark color. And that's the dark color that's going to be on the stem. It's going to be in the shadow segments, and it's going to be the shadow under the pumpkins. So we are going to start out, pick up some white, pick up some brown, that is your burnt umber, and we'll just start throwing that background on there. Now you can see why we traced over that with Sharpie, because we can still see the Sharpie through this thick paint. I mean, it's not that thick, and if you don't have a Sharpie and you're just using pencil lines, you maybe don't want to paint too heavily on this. This brown that I'm using, this burnt umber, this is a transparent color. So if you put that on by itself pretty thick, you should still be able to see through it. However, if you mix white with it, white is opaque and white will cover most of your background. So that'll be a little bit more difficult to see through. All right, just going to take some of that off of my pumpkin. I do want to cover all the edges though. If you're seeing a lot of stop and start marks from your paintbrush, ooh, got a little bit of a shine there, don't we? Just kind of go over it with big brush strokes. I don't mind the painterly look, but the start and stop marks, let's get rid of them. Okay. So now you can see we're down to the shadow. So I'm going to take the brown and the blue, give them a good mix together, and then right under those pumpkins. That's our shadow color. Okay, so now we've got that in there. What I'm going to do is take my paper towel, handy dandy paper towel, and I'm just going to blur this line. So where it goes over the top of the pumpkins, I'm just going to blur that out a little. okay? Because we don't want that to show up later. And at this stage, it might. However, don't take away your background. There. Finger painted that right back on there. All right. So at this point, we are going to let this painting dry. I should keep it up at a tilt so you can continue to see it, but we're going to let this painting dry now and come back, and then we'll start painting our segments of our pumpkins and adding some details. So click pause, blow dry it if you need to, or go take a break and let your painting dry. Come back when you're ready, hit the play button, and we'll continue painting. All right, I hope you enjoyed your break. The painting is now dry, and we are going to jump right back in and work on those pumpkins. Switching now to my filbert brush. Dunk that in a little bit of water. And now, like I said before, I'm starting with a dark color, which is blue and brown. Okay, so I'm first taking my dark color on that filbert brush and working back to front. So that means I'll be doing this behind pumpkin first. Okay, so that first segment is painted. And I have another segment right in here. Okay, and I'll come back and add a little bit of lighter color to that in a second. Third line down the segment, I'll tilt it up a little so you can kind of see. More brown in there. And I'm doing the crease or shadow or separation of the segment. There. And on this one as well. And that does go all the way down to the bottom of the pumpkin. Try not to leave any gaps here. If you didn't paint all the way up to your pumpkin, do bring your pumpkin out so that it covers any white gaps in your canvas. All right, I just want to make sure I have all my bases covered there. Simply wiping the paint out of the brush. The paint on my canvas is still wet, so now I can go in and pick up the white. Just a little touch of white, a little highlight spot on that backmost segment, and there we are, the first long segment. I'm just adding white in between the two dark stripes, wiping the brush off, and going along one edge of that to get a blend, going along the other edge of it, also to get a blend. Okay, so here is the trick. Once you get a blend, stop, don't touch it. All right, so now I'm going on to this big front segment, filling in the center area with white. Wiping the paint off the brush, and then I'm coming back over where the two colors meet, the blue and the white, and just dragging it across there for a nice blend. Wipe your paint off between each brush stroke. Actually, I think I want this a little brighter right there. Okay, how's that looking? One little blend right there. One little further blend right there. Okay, so let's take a look at close up. And then you can see how well that is blending. I think I would like my shadow area down here to be a little darker, but I might wait until the next round for that. All right, keep going. And now the background pumpkin is a little more blue than brown. The foreground pumpkin is a little more brown than blue. Just something to keep in mind as you're working. Okay, I've got my two blue stripes, one on each side, into the white, fill in that center. And then blend the two together. Clean the brush off with a paper towel, and then just drag it between the two colors to blend them. All right, moving a little further on to the next segment. And I know I've got some different areas in here to watch, which is my leaves are going to come across this. However, I still have to have a pumpkin first, so here we go, pumpkin. Another segment and a last segment. Okay. Wipe the brush off, get some white, fill in that segment. What's your favorite holiday while we're doing this? Is it by any chance? Thanksgiving? Halloween? Is it fall holiday? I do gotta say I like Thanksgiving. I love turkey and spending time with family. And those are two things that get to happen over Thanksgiving. There we go. So just had to wait for that bottom to dry a little bit and then dragged a little bit of brown from the bottom up. So I'll show you the difference in the blend, okay? You can actually see the dry brush marks on that brown blend. So that is a faux blend. So you're just taking wet paint, brushing it over dry paint, and then you can see on the blue, it's a very smooth transition. This, I call this a true blend, and then this a faux blend. So if you hear me using that terminology in any other video, that's exactly what I'm talking about. A true blend is blending two wet paint colors together, and a faux blend is dry brushing over one color over another. All right, on to that foreground pumpkin. Now this one is going to be a lot more brown than blue, but we also want to brighten it up. So for that, I have a little bit of yellow oxide. And any yellow really can work for this because the main color is brown and you're still going to have some blue. So I'm still taking the brown and blue. Put this right onto the back segments. All the way up to a segment where we need to blend. Oh, too much paint on the brush. Go back, take a little tiny bit of paint only. And I'm taking the edge of the segment. Now you can see, just like before, we have dark color, blank in the middle. So in the middle, I'm going to use white, drag it down the middle, wipe the brush off, back up to where the two colors meet, blue and white, and just dragging this brush between those two colors to blend. Wipe the brush off again, and now I'm dragging it between the white and the brown on the other side of the segment. Okay, I think I might want to just take a little tiny bit of brown from the bottom up. All right, and stop there. Okay, moving on. Don't forget, the way to get a good blend is to stop, put the brush down. Okay, here we are again. Brown, I added a touch of yellow to the brown this time. I might have to add more in a second layer because I don't think the color on this second pumpkin is different enough from the first one. All right, so they've got a little more yellow this time. Picking up some white, blending it down the middle. Clean up that edge a little bit. All right. And I'll take a darker color. And this time my darker color is going to be a little bit warmer darker. So I've got the yellow, a little bit of brown, not too much paint. I'm just coming up from the bottom. There. Leaving it alone. A little more brown, a little more blue, still have a little yellow in the brush. See, I think I can get a little more darker blue at the top. Okay, so now I've got my dark stripes, wiping the paint off the brush, picking up some white, adding my white stripes. One segment at a time, wipe off the brush. Blend the two edges of the colors together. Okay, back to picking up some more white, filling in the center of the next segment. You have to do this quickly while the paint is still wet. That's the key to a true blend, is you have to have two colors of wet paint. So if you let it dry too much, you're going to end up with a faux blend. Nothing wrong with that. It's just going to have a little bit of a different look. All right, here on this front segment, I'm mixing a little bit of yellow in with my white. That's getting to be a good color. Okay, this I'm much happier with. Blend it into the edges of the segment. Okay, so I'm also going to take a little bit of that because I like that color. Just add it to some of the other segments. There, and this is more of a faux blend. I'm just blending it over the top. All right, I'll let that be. Sure, there are some more details I could be adding to it, but let's move on. Okay. So we'll stop, take a look at our pumpkin, see what changes we may or may not want to make. I'm feeling like up here I need to have a little bit darker colors in the, just kind of in the shadows of the segments where they meet. And of course we're going to need some stems, some leaves. Let's work on the stems. So switching this time to my small round brush. And I'll pick up some dark color, brown and blue. A little white over the top. I just did the two edges. There we are. And then filled in the center with a lighter color, just like always. Of course, we want this to be a lot darker than lighter. So I'll let this dry a little bit and come back and bring in a second layer of dark. Moving on. Now I'll do this little stem down here, which is going to be mostly brown, little blue. Okay, and I'll just take a little yellow, little white, just throw in a little highlight area there. All right, leaving that alone now and moving on to those leaves. Tiny brush in the water. I'm going back to my filbert brush, rinsing it out, wiping the excess water on a paper towel. And let's take a look at these leaves. Okay, so the leaves are the only part that are really truly greenish. And for a green, we just mix our yellow and our blue. So just the yellow and the blue, it's going to make a dark green, which is perfect. And then we can add our lighter colors over it. So I'll start with a dark green. And all I'm doing is just filling in this little pumpkin leaf. And as you do this, just kind of keep in mind the direction of the leaf, the direction that your brush strokes should go. And I'm starting at the end of the leaves, those little pointy edges, and then pulling back toward the pumpkin, toward the stem. There we are. Okay, so I'll let that dry a little bit and I'll come back and add some other color variations to it. Can you see that there okay? I can see there's a little reflection. While this paint is wet, you're seeing some reflection. But when the paint dries, it looks pretty okay. There, I'll just kind of keep that in mind. A little more yellow, a little more blue, mixing up some more pumpkin leaf color. In this one, you can see I didn't mix it quite as well, so I'm getting a lot more variation on the leaf. And that can be a really fun look. Or you might look at it and go, oh my goodness, can't believe I didn't mix my paint that well. Okay, so we've got some light and dark variation in there. That's nice. And then we've got a little bit more of a leaf right down here. As long as we started with the variation on this one, let's keep going. So I'm adding a little bit of white and a little bit of yellow to my brush, which already has that green. So now I've got some pretty good color variety. And let's see, this last leaf, we'll try a little bit more, lean it a little more to the blue side. Nope, let's lean it a little more to the yellow side because it's over the top of that blue pumpkin. So just starting out at the tips of those edges on the leaf. and then just pulling back toward the stem. Okay, so we've got some good color there. Actually, let's try adding a little more blue to that right now. Okay. Just keep your brush strokes in mind. Which direction do you want your brush strokes to go? All right, so I think our first leaf is drying up a little. It's not perfectly dry, as you can see by the reflection, but it's pretty close. So we'll go back into that blue, and we'll add some shadows. So I'm just lightly dragging a tiny amount of blue with my filbert brush. A little heavy there, okay. Move on to the next one, add a little more touch of blue. I know I got more blue initially when I was painting this one on, but I'll just add a little bit more here and there, just for some color variation. Keep your colors bouncing around. That sounds like a weird thing to say, doesn't it? Keep your colors bouncing around. Actually, what I mean by that is keep your eye bouncing around the painting with the use of different colors. So whatever your points are that you want people to see, maybe you want them to notice the blue here and there and there. So in that case, you would really bump up the blue in those areas. A triangle is a good safe movement for an eye to make. The thing that you don't want to point people to is the edge of your canvas. You don't want to point people away from your painting. You want to keep them looking at the painting. So if they're looking here, and I might point them here, and I might point them there, or I might point them back up here. Just a thing to think about. All right, so I'm just adding a couple of little touch-ups of color. I would like to have a little more yellow up here, I think. Color reflects color. You're never going to have a color just here and nowhere else. So where you have this little bit of yellow, we're also going to want to try a little bit of that very similar yellow maybe up here in the leaf. Okay, so now I've got a little bit brighter leaf. Let's try a little bit of a stronger yellow. A couple of spots, okay. There we are. Maybe a little touch of that on the stem as a highlight. I definitely want a light yellow on this leaf that overlaps the blue pumpkin. Let's just make that sucker stand out. And a couple of little lighter colored highlights. Oops, a little too much paint. Work with a very small amount of paint when you're doing highlights. These highlights anyway. All right. All right, we've got a little bit of color variation in there, not so bad. Try to blend this guy out a little bit. It got a little bright. All right, so now we've got our pumpkins, our pumpkin leaves. Is there any final touch that we want to make to this? One thing I'm noticing is my line across here where my shadow was. I did try to wipe that off, but didn't do a very good job, I guess. So let's try that one more time. So I'm just putting a lighter color over it. All I'm trying to do is obliterate that line, that definition. And white is your opaque color, so whatever you put over it has to include white. There, how's that? Better? Yeah, I'm not seeing the line now, so I think that's all right. I think I'd like to make this area a little bit darker, a little more colorful. So I'll go back to some blue and some brown. And let's see here. This is a lot of blue. Where's my brown? I mean, it's a blue pumpkin, so yeah, I think that's probably okay. Okay, so now here we go back to the faux blending again. And the faux blending is going to be where you drag a dry brush, and by dry, it can be a painted brush. Yep, paint on your brush, but no water. And then you just drag it across another area I've already painted of other dry paint. And there you are. There you're getting a dry brush faux blending technique. Okay, I'll do a little bit more on the foreground pumpkin just to keep that shape going. So a little brown, a little yellow. I want to use some dark color so I can keep that shape. There. How's that looking? Get that faux blend in there. A little green. Okay, rinsing that brush, drying it out again. I'll just take a touch of yellow and white. There. Stop. Done. Leaving it alone. Okay, so now I have my pumpkins, I have my shading, I have the ground that they're sitting on, which they could be anchored a little more. I could do some more work there. And the next main thing that I have is my swirly vines, the big little curlicue vines. So let's first, okay, I'm going back to my filbert brush here, and I want to get that shading done because I really want those pumpkins to be anchored, because they kind of look like they're floating on the ground right now. I don't like it. So all I'm doing is coming into the darkest area of the shadows on the pumpkin, like between the segments, just adding a little touch of a really dark color in there, and then dragging it along the baseline underneath the pumpkins. All right, let's clean that brush a little. And I'm dragging away some of those edges on the pumpkin. I want those to blend in. I don't want them to stand out. I want them to be a shadow, not something crawling up a pumpkin. There. How's that? Well, I think that helped a whole lot. Yeah, now our pumpkins are sitting on the ground. Now they have a light source. All right. Putting that filbert brush back in the water, switching to my small round, and let's get going on those curlicues. So the best way to do this is to add a little bit of water to your paint, whatever color you decide to use. Mix it up. I'm using a brown and blue combination. More brown than blue, I think. Mixing water into it so that it flows smoothly. Loading up my small round brush with paint just by rolling that brush in the paint. Okay. Then when I pick it up, you can see it's got, maybe you can see that. Maybe it's going to focus. Well, anyway, I've got a brush loaded up with paint here. All right, so I'm coming along this this big top leaf. I'm just doing a little line barely in there, and it comes right down. Okay, so this is where it connects to the stem. And yeah, we might want to blend that line out a little bit, just a second. And then I've got another curlicue. Let's see. So I do a little curlicue. I'm starting from where the leaf and the stem meet. I'm just doing a little curlicue out. Okay, adding some more water to my watered down paint here. Just keep it thin, keep it flowing. There. Okay, so I'll go over to my leaf number 2. There we are, just dragging in some leaf veins. Okay, and I want to connect these kind of with a big curlicue. Keep this paint wet, keep it flowing smoothly. And this one's starting at the top of the pumpkin. So I'll do a little whoop. And where it touches the stem, I'll just blend that in so it looks like it's actually coming from the stem. Not so bad. Okay, a couple more little curlies. So thin paint again. Water down your paint so that it flows smoothly. Load up your little brush. And let's see here. So we're coming from this. And pretty much you can make these curlicues wherever you want them. All right, I think that is looking pretty okay. I've got some curlicues here, some there. If you wanted to make more coming out the sides, you certainly could do that. This is a nice quiet little painting that kind of just like sits quietly in the background. We've got some lovely leaves, some lovely pumpkins. We really got some depth in there with that final shadow we put at the bottom of it to help anchor that pumpkin to the ground. So yeah, I think this is looking pretty darn good here. Main colors that we used were going to be the phthalo blue, burnt umber, white, and a touch of yellow oxide, very similar to yellow ochre. And here we are, done with our pumpkin. Happy Halloween, happy fall. Thank you for painting along with me, and I will see you next week.